And we're here for another episode of Entering the Sports World. I'm here with Saginaw Spirit play-by-play guy, Joey Battaino. Thanks for coming on, Joey.
Thanks for having me, Bryce.
No problem. So we're going to jump right into it. So you have a little untraditional way of starting out in the business. So do you kind of want to take us through how you got your first job and kind of some of the steps you missed that not most people would take?
Yeah, it was actually kind of interesting and probably wouldn't be able to do it anymore the way I did. But I graduated high school. I was playing hockey in high school, enjoying it, but not playing at a high level, and knew that it was most likely going to end. And so, I started to take some classes in high school for television production that I really enjoyed, and I didn't really think twice about it. I was interested in it, but I was interested in behind the camera stuff. And as I progressed and got to my senior year in high school, I started to do on-camera work and do some news production and some talent of weather and sports and things like that. And, kind of caught the itch for it there. I wanted to be a sports reporter at the time. And so when I graduated high school, I was thinking about doing a lot of different things. I was obviously, everybody's thinking about four-year university, where they're going to go. Myself, I didn't take school probably as seriously as I should have. The grades for a lot of the four-year universities that I wanted to go to just weren't there. So I ended up going to a broadcasting school that was local in Michigan. It was only about 40 minutes away from where I lived at the time. And Specs Howard School of Media Arts is what it's called now. At the time, it was called the Specs Howard School of Broadcasting Arts. And it was I believe it was a 10-month program then, and went through the process and graduated in April of 2009. And, again, I was looking for internships at news stations. The school was really good about helping with things like that, not only while you're going, but also afterwards. And one of the situations that came up, or one of the job opportunities that were out there, was play-by-play for the old Flint Generals team in the IHL. They had been there for 39 years and household name in minor hockey. And, I just said, what the heck? I always loved hockey growing up. I had absolutely no experience play-by-play other than, turning down Jim Houston on NHL 99 and doing my own play-by-play. And that was it. So I went, I did an audition, I think, in a preseason game. I went up to Lapeer, Michigan, and like made a tape. Basically, I had no demo tape, nothing, and went and made a tape, sent it to the GM, and they hired me. And it was a great experience. The Flint Generals, I mean, what can I say? I pretty much owe my career to them giving me an opportunity at 18 years old. There's not a lot of guys who can say they started that early, and really, I didn't have a connection. My mom and dad didn't know anybody. I didn't have any brothers or sisters that played. I got lucky. That's basically what it is, and really had to earn my stripes from there. But those guys gave me an opportunity to start, and a lot of them are still around in the hockey world, even though the team isn't. And I'm forever grateful for those guys.
That's cool that you mentioned, like, especially because you didn't have any connections, because you see that a lot now, that somebody knows somebody and that helped them move up the food chain. So it's cool to hear, especially somebody who didn't even have to take the big 4-year program or anything. Because I know Lambton College, it's still a pretty good school. Like, no offense to offense to it. Like, I still attend it. But I see a lot of students go to Brock University or like all these universities who do get a little bit of a leverage up. So as somebody else who really took a step at a young age to try and make connections and all that, like I kind of did like a similar thing where I went to a dual credit type thing, which is kind of the closest thing for sports management strictly. And that really helped me out on my own. So it's cool to hear that somebody else took that step. But you didn't need to use the college as a platform to step up.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a fair point that a four-year university and in the U.S., a Syracuse, an Arizona State, uh, Ithaca. There's a lot of colleges that have really good um, broadcasting programs here in the U.S. And you can kind of leverage your alumni network by going to those schools. But at the same time, you know, at Syracuse, being on the air there is a process. It's a four-year process, and you don't start out as a freshman calling Syracuse basketball or Syracuse baseball even. So it's a process to get to that point, and hopefully by the time you're a senior, you get to do color or you get to even make an appearance on a singular broadcast. I was lucky. I was doing all those things at Specs Howard. I was in the mix. I mean, you're hands-on. You're doing the news every day. So there wasn't too many 18-year-olds out there on the job market where I could say, I could come in, I could do the news, I could do your sports, I could do your weather, and then I can also produce all those things. You know, I can also do all the behind the camera work that comes with doing that. So, you know, not a lot of people had that, and I think that was a huge leg up, even though it was just a play-by-play job at the end of the day in Flint. I think maybe the only reason I got that opportunity in the first place is because I had that training at Specs Howard where they knew they could depend on, you know, and not only would I be okay on the broadcasting side, because believe me, I wasn't, you know, I'm not far from Foster Hewitt now, but I know I wasn't close then. And then, you know, but also on the technical side where, you know, I had the background off camera stuff as well. So I think that was pretty key. And I can't speak for those guys. I mean, they hired me. I don't know what the process was, but I would assume that had something to do with it.
All right. So yeah, getting into that, what was it like just being an 18-year-old, being a part of a professional hockey team?
It's crazy. It was fun. I mean, we had, so the captain of the team was Pascal Réaume, and you know he's got a Stanley Cup ring with New Jersey and a lot of games in the NHL. Brian Smolinski was on that team, 700 plus games in the NHL, World Cup with the U.S. Longtime NHL veterans. So there were guys on that team, and not only just those guys. I mean, those are the buzzworthy guys. Those are people that or those are players that people know.
Marquee
There was a
player.
lot of there was a lot of lifelong minor league players that were on that team. One of the guys that was on that team his name is Nick Nieder, and if you ever look up his hockey DB, I think he has the world record for most teams played for in a professional hockey career. It's amazing. But he's a great guy. He was part of that team in Flint. So I was pretty lucky to get to work with a lot of those guys. And even though I was young and still making my way, you know, a lot of those guys had time for me, which was super important. Our head coach was Jason Mazzotti. He's the goalie coach right now in Carolina. He always had time for me. I could go in his office whenever and have a chat. So it was key that I learned the right way. Obviously, at such a young age, and having it be my first year, and you know, I thought the team, you know, was extremely professional in their approach and how they kind of taught me day to day. And then, you know, obviously as well, I have the media who covered the team to thank as well. You know, I wasn't handling PR or anything like that for the team at the time. So I was kind of in the mix with the media people who were covering the team on a day to day. And even though I was working for the team and not for a media outlet, they still, one guy who had been covering the Flint Generals for quite a few years was awesome to me and made sure that, you know, I was getting all the questions in that I needed to ask, and just little things like that, that as you get older, you realize that they were really doing you a favor. So it was a lot. It was a whirlwind. I made a ton of mistakes. It's important to note that I made a ton of mistakes. I tried my best to learn from those mistakes as early as possible. I think I did, and I think that's a lot of the reason why you have longevity in this business. Is it's okay to make mistakes, but it's not okay to make the same mistake twice. And I think that's part of the key of having longevity in this business.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I even stress, like, because I'm a couple of years up on being an intern with the Sarnia Sting, and when new interns come in, I say you're gonna make mistakes, but like you said, you gotta learn from it. Don't repeatedly make that mistake. Like, uh, but jumping in, I know we're gonna fast track a few years on your career. I know you spent some time in the Null and other ventures of broadcasting, but we're gonna talk about your time with the Saginaw Spirit. What's that like getting to work for your own home state?
Well, it was big. I had spent 2 years in Odessa, Texas, which couldn't have been further from my home state. It was about a 23-hour drive down there. And I learned a lot by moving down there. And what I learned the most is that I really enjoy Michigan. So I came back home after 2 years there and was out of work. It was the summer of 2015. And for the first time since I had started in the business in 2009, I didn't have a job. And I was doing things here and there. I was doing odd jobs, helping out a couple of buddies of mine. And, I was almost perfectly comfortable at the time with saying, maybe I'm done. Maybe this isn't for me. Um, Things work out a certain way. And I started to consider that once July came. I was actively seeking employment, but just wasn't getting the results I'd hoped for early in the off season that year in 2015. And as you probably figured out by now, Bryce, I know you're still pretty young in your career, but the advice that I give to young guys in the business who get a little antsy in June and early July is not much happens in the off season in hockey in June and July. So relax. You're not out of the race just because you haven't heard anything, especially on the broadcasting side. And so, believe it or not, it was about mid-July 2015. I had kicked some tires on Flint because Plymouth had just moved to Flint to
It was
become the
right around.
Firebirds. Yeah. And so I kicked some tires on that because I had previously been in Flint. I didn't know if it was a good fit or not. Turns out it wasn't a good fit for me. But, I met somebody through that opportunity or through that call, through that meeting. And, they had let me know that Lee Cunningham, who had been here in Saginaw for 7 years and beloved broadcaster here in Saginaw, I think he has a great call. The Sarnia play-by-play job on the radio had opened up, and he was from Sarnia and wanted the opportunity to move back home, and he was going to take it. So through that connection I had made through the tire kicking I had done in Flint, I got the opportunity to sit in on to interview with the team. First, I had a meeting with Lee Cunningham, believe it or not, after he'd already left the team, but had a meeting with him. It went great. I'd never met Lee. I'd had conversations with him before, but we had never met face to face, and we had a really good talk about just the business and what we find important in calling hockey games, and found out we had a lot of similarities in the way we call games. Even though he's a Canadian and I'm an American, we're both pretty traditional in the way we call the game. And it just was a smooth transition for the fan base to have two guys who call a similar game come in, and there was no, the first year was a little tough always when you have a guy you're familiar with for 7 years leave the team, and then it's a new guy coming in, and then not only is he a new guy, but he's also a young guy. So there was some, I think there was a process a little bit for our fans getting used to the call at first, but they've been good to me, and now it's flown by. It's already been 5 years, and can't thank the Spirit fans enough. They've been good to me all over the 5 years, and thankfully, on the ice, we've had a ton of success, which makes my job that much more easier.
Yeah, throughout those 5 years, you can see the success really skyrocketing as it's gone on. What do you think's been the biggest change throughout that? Because Saginaw hasn't always been the powerhouse of the division, and now I look at them as the best team in the division. That's arguable. But what do you think of how they've risen throughout your time with the team?
Well, especially when I got here in 2015. Bryce, you know the OHL. A lot of people who are watching this podcast understand the OHL is a 19 and 20-year-old league, and obviously you can only carry 3 20-year-olds on your team. So you're as good as your 19-year-old players are in a lot of different areas. Um, Nothing against those players in 2015, but Saginaw was an older team that didn't produce a whole lot that year, and you're in a tough spot when you're in the OHL and you have an older group that's struggling. And that's where we were. So Dave Drinkle came in. He tried to make it work by making some trades. I think we got Will Petchnig from Oshawa. He had won a Memorial Cup the year before. We tried to kind of piece together a contender. We weren't bad. We just weren't good. And you know, I think we got Hayden Hodgson from Sarnia in a trade. So we had some players, but it just, that year, was it London? London won the Memorial Cup. Kachuk, Marner, Dvorak, Mete, Yolevi. Yeah, no chance.
Yeah, the London special.
Yeah, so, but we got younger. We made some trades at the deadline. That was the first year, I think, we were trying to get younger. We made a coaching change. So Dave Drinkle, our general manager, who we hired, I think, 2 weeks before I got hired. He was starting to put his fingerprints on the team that year. But it's like turning a ship in the OHL because you draft kids and then you hope really 2 years down the road at the earliest is when they're really going to start to make that impact, right? Well, this was Dave's first. Dave hadn't even had a draft yet because that was the outgoing general manager, Jim Palafito's draft. So he did the best he could with what he had that year. I think 16-17 when we were, I believe, the second youngest team in the league, 16-17. Maybe that was the year after. But we were, again, trading players, getting younger, trading players, getting younger. A lot of losing that year, missed the playoffs for the first time in 11 years. 17-18, you started to see the fruits of the labor. Second youngest team in the league, but winning some games, winning some big games. Down 6-0 to Sarnia, winning 7-6 in overtime against the number one team in the CHL. Sorry about that, Bryce. I know. But, those type of wins, those type of character building wins, and you need that to build the culture. And by 18-19, everything had aligned. And I didn't even mention in there that the job that our hockey staff has done recruiting players, that's completely done a 180 since I've been here. Obviously, before, Saginaw had a little bit of a tough time with that. I mean, you look, Phil Kessel, Mark Scheifele, these are all Saginaw Spirit draft picks that never played a game, JT Confer, I go down the list. But that was an area that Saginaw had struggled in years past. And now they're one of the best in the OHL in recruiting players. So complete credit to Dave Drinkle, our hockey staff. And I think hiring Chris Lazary or promoting Chris Lazary from associate coach to head coach 2018-19 season was an integral part of the team winning the division and getting to the conference final, because at the time, this was the team that was picked to win the division, and they were 11-9, 1-1. And that wasn't sitting too well, and could have been a lot different that year had that decision not been made. So, again, credit to Dave there for making the right decision, and I think Laz was the guy. And I don't know if you've had any experience working with Laz, because he used to be in Sarnia before he was in Saginaw. But what a great guy he is, and what a really good coach, good players coach, and has a real good feel for his group and his players. And it was the right guy at the right time, as they say.
Yeah, and it's funny you explain like the younger and then it grows better, which I know you took a little shot at the Sting, but they're kind of doing the same thing right now. So in a few years, they'll be known as one of the better powerhouses. But one thing I noticed with Saginaw with their recruiting is they do a really good job of taking the American-born players and turning them into the stars. So one, for example, like Davis Codd, who they just got, they're come over from the year this past year. What do you think he's kind of, or do you think he's projected to kind of go? Because when I watch him play, I think he's got all the talent in the world. Like he's going to be really good. And I think one of the other big things about getting him was Perfetti. Do you agree with that?
For sure. I think Davis Codd, or T-Bone, as they call him, I think T-Bone Codd's going to be a star in this league. And it's because of how he carries himself, not only on the ice, but off the ice. Loves the camera, loves to talk, loves to have the interviews, and he's a media darling. He looks the part and then plays the part. And that's big. I mean, if you can get that going as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old at the junior hockey level, like Cole Perfetti has, where he's the same thing. He's the same guy on and off the ice. I think the sky's the limit. And yeah, I think T-Bone's going to be a star. And you just scratched the surface on what he brings to the table, because I think it took him a good 6 weeks last year at the beginning of the year to get his feet wet. And he was in a role he wasn't comfortable with. I mean, he was playing fourth line minutes as a guy who is used to, getting double and triple shifted on Little Caesars. So that was an adjustment for him, and he had to buy in. And once he did, he started to play a much more effective game. And then the points didn't come right away, but as he was playing a more effective game, the trust built with the coaching staff. They put him in situations where he can get some points and score some goals. And sure enough, he delivered when given that opportunity. And yeah, I again, and then he loves to tell you about it when it's done. So he's he's going to be a star in this league, and I'm looking forward to watching him grow.
You gotta love somebody with the nickname T-Bone as well. But
no, he's got a ton of personality. You should have seen him the day we signed him at the media gathering. He was all about it. He's telling stories, he's cracking jokes, and the kid's 16 years old. I mean, some of these guys come in and they've never had a camera in their face in their lives, and they're scared. T-Bone came in and ate it up, loved every second of it. And again, that's only going to grow. Like, this is a 16-year-old kid. By the time he's 18, 19 years old, he's just got that swagger about him. That translates on the ice. Yeah, look out. I mean, he could be the same quality caliber of a Cole Perfetti as a junior player. I think he has that type of ceiling.
I see that as well. So while we're on the topic of Cole Perfetti, because we could spend 30 minutes just talking about him alone, we'll start with just what do you see in his game that really accelerates him? Because everyone talks about his hands, and yes, they are exceptional, but I think he has just a vision for the game that doesn't get noticed as much as it should.
He has a vision. His hockey IQ is off the charts. So a lot of people, obviously the biggest criticism on Cole Perfetti is his lack of skating ability, or what people say is a lack of skating ability. I think it's more, sometimes it's an inability to get there, to be in the mix, whether it's a forecheck, back check situation. But it's just funny how the puck seems to follow him in the offensive zone. And there's an intangible there that I can't really describe, or I can't understand it myself, but he just knows where to be. So for me, to go goal line to goal line, and he's not Connor McDavid or he's not Nathan McKinnon, I don't think that matters to me, at least. I don't think he needs it. I think you might even lose a little bit of that vision or awareness if he had a little bit more in the tank in terms of what he could offer speed-wise. He has an uncanny ability to make players play at his speed. And sometimes he'll put you right to sleep. And next thing you know, it's in the back of your net. Whether he's coming in with the puck or he's making a pass, and you didn't even see that guy, because all five guys in the ice are fixated on Cole Perfetti with the puck on his stick, The next thing you know, it's in the back of the net. So I think his intangibles for the game are through the roof. His awareness on the ice is what stands out to me. It's not where the puck is, it's where the puck's going to go. And he always seems to have a sixth sense of where the puck's going to be, and he's going to be there for it. And I you can't teach that. That's something that Cole Perfetti has, and I think he has that more than anyone else in this draft.
So where do you think he is going to go in this draft? Because he's been all over the top 10 and all that. I've been saying this to a bunch of my buddies. I think he's going to be the steal of this draft. I think he's the way how everyone's got a bunch of people rated over him. I think he's probably going to drop, which I don't think should happen, but it looks like it's going to happen. And then the team that gets him, wow, are they going to get a player?
I still think he's going to go number 4 to Detroit. That's where I have him on my list. I hear what you're saying, and yeah, it seems to change by the week, though. It's funny, none of these kids are playing yet. Their draft rankings are changing weekly, it seems. So it's just interesting how that works. But no, I think Cole Perfetti is going to go number 4 to Detroit. I think that's a good fit for him. If not, maybe Anaheim. That seems where was that? I think that's 7 overall.
Yeah, I believe they're right in that area.
Yeah, so if he drops, he's not going to drop very far. I mean, you can't argue with that skill set. You can't argue with that finishing ability and tight. I mean, this is a kid who's 5'10", 5'11", and not a big kid. And look where he's scoring his goals. I mean, he goes to the front of the net. He gets crushed, and he comes back every time. I mean, you can't teach that. I mean, there's just not a willingness with players his size to go to that area of the ice in this age group. There's just not. So I think that in itself makes him NHL ready and maybe a little bit more NHL ready than some players who they have rated above Cole Perfetti right now. So that's my take. I think at this point, number 4 to Detroit is what I would say would be most comfortable for me. But if he drops, he won't drop out of the top 10. I don't believe.
Yeah, and I think even another place where he could really stand out is at the World Juniors next year. And another player who could make the World Juniors who I want to talk about is Tristan Lennox. Now, I've got to really watch him play against Sarnia last year. I really remember seeing him in the playoffs when he came out of nowhere. But what are your thoughts on him?
Well, yeah, that was Tristan's coming out party in the playoffs last year. He got put under the microscope. Obviously, Ivan Prosvetov gets suspended in the conference finals, and Lenny has to come in Game 3 and really played his heart out. Like, I think our players who are there in that series right now would agree to a man that they probably didn't do, or they could have done a little bit better job protecting Tristan in the games that followed Game 1 and 2. He faced a lot of shots, and Guelph was, as they say these days, Guelph was a wagon. They were unreal, and they had some physical, big kids on that team. Saginaw a little bit undersized, comparatively speaking, and they started running around, and they started playing big boy hockey, and you know, they took the temperature of the officials and what they could get away with, and it seemed like the things loosened up as the series went on, and that played in as well with Guelph. So I thought Tristan Lennox held his own through the whole way. You know, he got us a win on the road. What else could you expect from a rookie goalie to get you a playoff win on the road? So I thought he was great in the playoffs. He's a little bit banged up, and he played in the Holanka. I thought he was really good in the Holanka. And then he's a little bit banged up coming in to start the year, and struggled a little bit off the start. But he got better as the year went on, and he was really playing well. He was starting to get the bulk of the playing time as well. Like Marshall Frappier was getting most of the playing time early in the year, and then that seemed to switch as the year went on. Lenny was getting more and more comfortable, and he's a player too that when he is exuding confidence or swagger, he's a better player. He's a better goalie when he's feeling it, and he's feeling it. You can see it. And that's what happened toward the end of the year. It wasn't just Lenny's making saves. It's Lenny's making saves, and you're going to know he's making some saves because he's letting you know. He's giving you the glove, and he's pushing you with the blocker out of the crease and things like that. When he's engaged in the game that way, it's a tough goalie to beat because not only is he making saves, but he's in your head while he's doing it. And, I think, again, you have to have that confidence if you're going to be a goaltender at this level. And it's unfortunate the season ended when it did because I thought he was playing his best hockey of the year. And I guess it's hard to say this now because we don't know, but I have a feeling that Tristan Lennox would have been the goalie leading the Saginaw Spirit into the playoffs. I don't know that to be true now, but I have a feeling based on the way he was playing in March that he would have been the Spirit's guy. And, who knows? Now he comes in. It's his third year in the OHL, and, he's going to start his draft year. This is a big year for him, but he got a lot of experience as an underage goalie in this league. So I think he'll be one of the premier goalies in the OHL this year in his draft year, which is really cool to see. And he might even get an opportunity at the World Juniors. So that'd be great to see as well for him. He's earned it.
Yeah. So last player I really want to touch on about Saginaw, and like you mentioned, going into the playoffs, boy, would have been nice to have Bodie Wild going into the playoffs for this season. He was a point-per-game player, even the season he did play. But the one thing I noticed with Bodie Wild, because I considered him last year the best defenseman in the OHL, let alone this year. When I watch him play, I honestly see John Carlson type, the way how he can skate the puck and just move and do it all offensively and do it defensively at a physical pace. What have you really noticed from watching Bodie?
That's I'm not a huge fan of NHL comparables, but John Carlson to Bodie Wild might be the most accurate NHL comparable that I've ever heard. Like, they're almost the same player. Man amongst boys this year in particular. He could do whatever he wants with the puck at any given time. Sometimes that leads to some what looks to be careless turnovers in the defensive zone, but I think you live with that because the skating, the edge work is through the roof. Watch this guy skate in the defensive zone. His edge work is top notch. There's no better defenseman in the league when it comes to skating. And luckily for Saginaw is that Bridgeport last year had a ton of veteran AHL defensemen that they had to play. And so, Bodie got hurt, so he's obviously trying to get back in the lineup. He's rehabilitating. He's getting ready. He's practicing with them, but he's not getting an opportunity to play. And so, what a huge addition at the trade deadline. I mean, there wasn't a player that was playing in the OHL that you could have traded for that had a bigger impact than Bodie Wild did coming back to the Spirit. And it's a shame we only got a handful of games with him because it looked like he was just starting to get comfortable again playing at that game speed. His first couple of games with the Spirit, he struggled a little bit because he hadn't played in so long at that game speed. And I think it took him a second to kind of, I don't want to say break habits because I know the Islanders want him to play a certain way, but it took him an extra game or so to remember how he's supposed to play with us and move the puck and skate it out of the zone and go 200 feet if he has to. And once he started doing that, again, immovable object, great skater, tremendous balance, and the edge work, the turning, the pivoting in the defensive zone and the offensive zone, the deception when he shoots the puck. You'll see him turn his hips, turn his shoulders. You don't see that in this league. It was really fun to watch, and he's a great player, and I really hope he gets. I know he's going to get an opportunity in pro hockey this year, and hopefully he's able to make the most of it.
Yeah. All right. So going back to your US Saginaw this season especially. I really paid attention to some of the promotional stuff Saginaw was doing, and one of them, really, one of the reasons I started even doing this podcast was because of Spittin' Chicklets, and Saginaw had their own Spittin' Chicklets night, and you got to broadcast with Paul Bissonnette. What was that like?
Well, it was really fun. First of all, like, great guy to work with, really easygoing. When he came to the arena that day, he would have done anything that we asked him to do. I mean, he was really engaged. He really wanted to do something for Saginaw. Obviously, he played part of his junior career in Saginaw, most of it being in North Bay, part of it in Saginaw, and then finished out in Owen Sound. But what a great guy! I mean, what a nice guy, and came in, and he basically, I was working mostly with his agent at first in terms of setting everything up on the broadcast side, and then when he did come in, I started to go over with him what we wanted to do that night, and he basically said, well, just let me know, like, I'll do whatever you need me to do. So he came up to the booth, and I was hoping I'd get him for 10 minutes, like until the media timeout, and he was great. He stuck around. We did the whole period. He was actually telling a story when Cole Perfetti scored a goal, and he got the call to goal. So that was kind of cool, and he was excited about that because he was, obviously everybody hears about Cole Perfetti, and it was his first time seeing him play in real life. So he was excited about that and excited he scored, and he saw a good game. Unfortunately, Saginaw didn't win, but we've had a few nail biters this year with Flint, and that was one of those games. Good game, big crowd, obviously, and Biz, he really went the extra mile to make sure the fans in Saginaw know that he appreciated his time playing for the Spirit, and it was really cool to have him, and hopefully it's not the last time. That's one thing that I was hoping that we could change here too is, in years past, kind of lost touch with a lot of some of our alumni, and those guys are playing prominent roles in the NHL right now, and I think it really started 2016 when we were able to get Vincent Trocheck to come back, and we retired his number, and that was really important to him. It was the first Spirit jersey retirement, and we've kind of built off that with our alumni network, is doing a better job of keeping in touch with these guys, and getting them to help us out. Fans want to hear from those guys, and I know Sarnia did a great job. I believe it was beginning of last year with Steven Stamkos' jersey retirement. I thought the team pulled that off amazingly, and he was great, and the team did a great job with it. And those things are so important to building the OHL for years to come, is keeping in touch with the alumni and seeing what they could do to give back, because a lot of these guys do. You just got to reach out, and they'll do it.
Yeah, that's the cool part. Like, even players who go on to play university hockey or whatever, like we had a few players come back, but Francos Bavario was one. He came back, and we had like sound the sworn, like we had a siren go off before the game, and he was rolling it, and the whole crowd went berserk as soon as they seen him on the jumbotron. It was
Franco's a local guy, right? So that helps too, right? Franco's from the area. I think he grew up playing there too, right?
Yeah, he played minor hockey with the Lambton Junior Sting.
Yeah, now we have one of those players too with Mitchell Smith, growing up and playing in Saginaw. Unfortunately, we didn't have a minor hockey program here when Mitchell would have played, so he went down and played Oakland Junior Grizzlies in the Detroit area. But he came back up, and when the Spirit drafted him, he was pumped. I mean, he's a lifelong Spirit fan that now gets to play for the team as a teenager, and I'm sure that's something he'll never forget. And same thing for Franco. I don't want to speak too much for him, but I'm assuming that those are the best times of his life, playing for the Sarnia Sting, and getting the opportunity to come back is really cool, and it's something unique to the junior hockey experience.
Exactly. So one last question here. This has been really good, but what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody looking to join the sports industry?
Well, let's pre-COVID or no?
If you want to give Pre-COVID and both, like now? Go ahead.
Okay, so pre-COVID, I guess my answer is not really that much different. It's just that much more difficult now. Um, but of course, it's just building your alumni or building your network. And how you do that is you build relationships. So how do you build relationships? Well, relationships come from opportunity. So a lot of young guys now, the cool thing is that there's so many different broadcast mediums, and you're doing one of them. You have your own podcast. There's so many different ways to get yourself out there and get in front of a camera and get comfortable with speaking to an audience that there's no excuse for not getting reps anymore. There used to be a time where, I can say back in 2008 when I was trying to break in, my excuse is I don't have any experience because nobody gave me any experience. You don't have that excuse anymore. Go take a camera and go shoot a stand-up in front of a high school football field or something like that. So there's no excuses anymore for not getting reps. You should be fully equipped when you get your first job to handle it in a professional manner. So make your own breaks, get your own reps, and then when you do get the opportunity to do it at a professional level, don't stop networking. And that's something that if I could go back 10 years and tell my former self to do, I would, because I didn't know. When I was 18 years old and I got my first job in professional hockey, I was under the false pretense that this was going to be a lot easier than it was. And hey, you don't know what you don't know when you're 18 years old, right? But obviously now I'm almost 30. I know that this business is really competitive, one, and now more than ever, there's just not a whole lot of jobs. So you have to stay fresh. You have to stay on top of what's trending, I guess, now in social media. You have to be prominent and out front on your own social media. So there's so many different factors that comes to with being a broadcaster now. It's definitely not just waiting for the on-air light to go on anymore. I mean, it is a constant 24 hours, 7 day a week brand building excursion to be a broadcaster in today's world. And it's fun. It's unique that way, is that you get to kind of build a personality outside of what you do on the air. A lot of 15, 20 years ago, a lot of people were kind of restricted to who they were when the camera turns on. Now you have social media, you can be yourself. You can let people in. It's okay to have a following of people that aren't your audience every single night. But you'll open yourself up to getting a larger audience by letting those people in to your day-to-day life. And I think that's what social media has done for a lot of people, is help them grow into someone who's just a little bit more forthcoming and outright in their personality traits and what they think is important in their day-to-day life. You find that you have a lot in common with people that you didn't think you'd have anything in common with.
Yeah.
Is that good enough? I don't know.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't get asked that question very much because I don't know what it is now. Post-COVID, I mean, just keep sending emails, keep doing Zoom calls.
That's about all I could say to it. Just
keep in touch with players that you like. I guess the biggest thing that I could say right now for post-COVID is keep in touch. Keep in touch with players, with coaches, with staff you work with day to day, people you don't work with day to day. Hey, what's going on in Niagara? Hey, what's going on? Who knows where? You'd be surprised what you learn just through those quick 5-10 minute conversations you might have, whether it's over the phone or via email or via Zoom call or whatever it may be. But just don't go away. Just because it's COVID, don't fold your tent just because things seem like they're stagnant right now. Keep pushing forward, keep moving. stay relevant. Stay relevant. If you want to be a broadcaster post-COVID, do content. Stay relevant. Stay out there.
Perfect. So that's all we got for now. Thank you for coming on, Joey. If there's anything else you want to promote right now, now's the time.
I got nothing to promote outside. I guess you can follow me on social media. I'm kind of in a holding pattern myself. We're obviously waiting for a return to play date in the Canadian Hockey League. Actually, in the OHL, I think the Western League and the Quebec League have both given a date, but the OHL hasn't yet. But yeah, my social is at Joey Battaino. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. All the old people are on Facebook, so I'm still on Facebook if anyone's still on Facebook nowadays as well. But definitely most active on my Twitter account, and I'll be tweeting about NHL playoffs. So if anybody wants to talk hockey, which, man, I've missed that, give me a follow on Twitter and let's talk some hockey playoffs.
All right. Thank you.